all time. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but Macho Man Randy Savage, he's been both. He's been great at both, in my opinion. But was he a better heel or a face, DJ?
Boy, you would start off with the toughest one on the list.
Really, it's hard.
This one's very hard because Randy had an amazing career either way he went. I would have to say overall, he was more effective as a heel. Macho King Randy Savage was an incredible run.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely unhinged. I hate your face wrestler. Was just incredible. I think his original babyface run in that feud leading up to him and Hogan was fine. I think his babyface run later on down the road was a little better, but in my opinion, more effective as a heel.
I actually agree with you on that point he's made. I'll elaborate in a second.
Sure.
Rob, who's better, heel, face, Savage?
I say heel because he was able, and not I mean, he did great as a babyface also, but as a heel, he's one of the few people who could really just go all the way to just doing horrible things. Right? I mean, like the thing with the ring bell and Ricky Steamboat crushing his throat. And the way he was the abusive behavior towards Elizabeth, and just I mean, he was willing to do that stuff, and everybody's not willing to like push the envelope that much to get heat or whatever, and he was willing to do that, and and then I mean later on with Jake, and then in WCW with Diamond Dallas Page, um, I mean, yeah, I mean he was willing to push it there, right? And especially and nowadays when I mean I'm just constantly just exasperated with heels today because they rarely want to go all the way, because I mean you got to do some line crossing kind of stuff, and a lot of them today they either don't do that, or they do, or they undercut the line crossing because by playing to the crowd, because and all of that. And but when it was time to be the heel, Randy went all the way. um there was no winking at the camera. There was no, hey, please buy my t-shirt too kind of stuff going on.
Especially in an era where heels didn't sell merch. He was such one of the few that probably did, because you even see back in his heel run in 86 and 87 before he turned face, you saw folks out there with the Macho Man t-shirts in the crowd.
Yeah, and honestly, which is why they had to turn him face, because he was one of those people like him and the Road Warriors, and guys like that, like they were just too fucking cool to keep booing, right?
Yeah.
So you eventually, like, you just had to turn them face, because people weren't going to boo them forever, right? And because look, I mean, it's it's a show about fighting, and people who are really good at beating the shit out of other people are eventually going to get cheered. I mean,
yeah.
And
well, go ahead.
You could never keep him heel forever. You always had. I mean, whether no matter what company he was in, they always ended up flipping him back to face, because whether it was in WWE or in WCW, or even back in Memphis, in his early days when he was shooting with Jerry Lawler, he eventually ended up teaming up with Jerry Lawler, like before it was all over. All for the same reasons, right? I mean, you just couldn't, you just couldn't keep him bad, but he did a great job at being a heel and at doing heel stuff. So, I mean, if I had him, look, I mean, if he worked for my wrestling company, he would start out heel, and I'll keep him there. And then, look, I do what everybody else did. You keep him there doing it as long as you can, right? And then when when it gets to the point where you just can't keep him there anymore, then you turn him face. But I would start him out by having heel for sure.
What's funny, because, and by the way, we clean sweep here heel as well too. Although I will say this real quick. if you're talking about WCW Savage, I would argue face over heel because he started as a face too in WCW '94, and his face runs I would say was actually more very effective in a lot of ways. His feud with Flair early on in '94, '95 was a phenomenal feud. I would argue the feud was better there than it was in WWF in '92. But Savage got more traction as a heel. That's the thing. He got more traction as a heel. It's funny because his height of powers in terms of success was as a face. Both his title reigns were as faces. But of course, that's also a time where the industry is different. Vince back there wasn't giving the heels titles, the world title at that time. And if it was more of a transitional thing with Slaughter or Andre / DiBiase. That's what it was. But Savage did more as a heel. And that's what makes 1987 so phenomenal if you watch in detail. Like, even as dastardly the heel he was, treating Elizabeth like shit. The Ricky Steamboat thing with the bell and the crushing his larynx. It's funny. He loses the title to Steamboat WrestleMania 3. And yet, even with losing the title, he's the made man more than Steamboat was. Now, Steamboat obviously leaving the company didn't help. But even I would say even after Steamboat won the match, and we didn't know Steamboat was going to leave because he was having a kid, Savage made out more out of that than Steamboat did. Because it was hard to boo him at that point because he was so over. He was also a great worker that even though you didn't like him, you got to respect him. And eventually, that natural turn the rest of the year, 87. If you watch I'm watching the 87 deep dive like last couple months, watching the natural turn, of Savage from heel to face. It wasn't like sudden. It was just natural. He got more crowd. He got more and more crowd appreciation. And you saw less and less of the heel tactics in the ring too as well, and obviously they did it because Hogan's going to wait a year later to do film movies and you need to find the next guy, and clearly he was the next guy for that year when Hogan was gone. It's a fascinating thing because that term was so natural and so original, and of course you sprinkle Hogan dust to make sure it sticks and all these other things make sure it sticks. It's a lot closer than people get credit for. I don't mind his 88 face run when with the title. It was good. But it wasn't this. You can feel if you watch some of his promos and watch some of the vignettes, he loses a little bit of edge as a babyface, a little bit of an edge because he has to be a little more courteous and cater to the nice crowd. Okay, well now I'm the face of the company for a little while, and then when he's a heel, that what makes Savage great with the edge comes back, the humor comes back, the sarcasm comes back. I have to go heel as well too, but it's a lot closer to being credit for.
Okay.
So, but if you're saying WCW though, I might go face over heel because
I'd have to go back and revisit his WCW baby because I was largely checked out on WCW during that Hogan Savage before the NWO.
Right, correct.
I was checked out largely. I mean, I kept an ear to the ground, and if they had a pay-per-view on that my friends and I were interested in, we would order it. But largely, I'm gonna have to go back and revisit it.
It actually mimics his face run, the second face run he did 91, late 91 and 92.
Yeah,
it mimics it in some ways.
I'm doing another podcast with some guys, the Big Four Project. We go through the Big Four WWE pay-per-views, and we just went through WrestleMania 8, I think.
92.
Now Savage versus Flair.
The main event.
Absolutely incredible feud, absolutely incredible match.
Yes.
And it was a great little moment in time. But I felt like sometimes with Randy's babyface runs, they relied a little too heavily on Elizabeth for sympathy for him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I always go back to he was more effective on his own as a heel.
They did do less of that, though, that run. See, if you look at Savage's both face runs in 87, 88 into early 89 versus the one in 91, 92.
Right.
The 191, 92, while he was a face, he was way more aggressive. He was way more edgier. Whereas in 88, you feel like it was a little tempered down.
Yeah, they were trying to water it down a little bit.
Right. I think by 91, 92, they felt like, you know what, he can still be a babyface and still be a kick-ass, because at that point he's a main man, and no matter what, and even as Macho King, as a heel, he was still getting crowds.
Macho King was one of my favorite gimmicks of all time.
Well, it's funny.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was funny during the '88 because like Hogan was actually the one that had more edge because that's when Hogan he was wearing like the helmet with the fist on it and he was hitting people with chairs and doing all types of stuff.
Yeah, it's why I told you a couple times back on the podcast that '88 year when Hogan got titles was one of my favorite Hogan years ever.
Well, it's fun because he wasn't champion, so he didn't have to do all the heroic champion stuff. He could just fight people.
Correct.
And that's when he was feuding with like Boss Man and and all those guys. And yeah, he just went out there.
Team.
Yeah, he just went out there. He just went out there and fought people. He didn't have to do all the world champion stuff.
Yeah. Unhinged Hulk Hogan was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he was. And you see the early elements of Hollywood. The early elements. Not quite there, but you see the early elements. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. Savage, we all agree here. Savage is a heel, still respected. And by the way, I think the Macho King run gets so slept on still. But then again, it does because he's so great. Because pick an era, pick an era. Because even the '87, the '86 Arizona heel run was amazing.
Yeah,
as IC champion. So pick an era. But the Macho King run was phenomenal. Him and Sherry. I get the early run with Liz made sense. The yin and yang of Liz being the calm, cool, collected, and docile person, and the Savage being the obviously who he is. But Sherry matched Savage's actual temperament. That's the person who matched his temperament. So, all right, next one. Go ahead. What?
To make an analogy for all you comic book nerds out there, it's like the difference between when Cyclops was with Jean Grey versus when he was with Emma Frost.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Good call.
When he
that's a good one.
When he was with Emma Frost, was just like let him embrace his inner, fuck all these people type of right. And
that's a good call.
And that's when he got more radical. Yeah, I mean that's when he got more radical and started acting more like Magneto than Professor X. And Sherry was kind of the same way with Savage. Just he got to embrace his inner fuck everybody. And I don't give a shit. And
no, I agree with that 100%. That's a great call there. All right, next one here.